It's time for a late season elk hunt. Now this is a controlled hunt that Aubrey drew. She had some good luck this year. So we have never applied for or hunted this particular unit, this particular season or anything like that. So here we are in November. We're going to see if we can't get an elk, and she's actually after a bull. That's what this tag is for. So anyways, we're going to head out and see if Aubrey can't bag herself a nice bull. The first time we went out was for just an evening hunt. As this was the first time hunting the area, we spent a while just getting a feel for it. Of course, we did a lot of glassing, but it wasn't until just before dark that we finally spotted some elk. They were way up a ridge, much too far to do anything about with the amount of daylight we had left, so instead we just drove to a couple other angles to make sure we could see all the visible elk. In the end, all we found were mostly cow elk with a couple spikes and one little raghorn. While Aubrey's goals might change, for now she was hoping for a mature bull to fill her tag with. We'd come back the next day and try another area. This morning, up on the tops of those just snow-covered hills that have no trees, happened to catch a couple bulls go up and over. They were too far away, several miles away. I could just tell they were bulls, so we're going to head up there and see if we can't see what they are. Hopefully, you know, there's a decent bull up there. But anyway, so we're starting the day off with something to hike after. We bundled up against the cold and headed off, sure the elk would be just over the ridge I saw them disappear over. At the point we started hiking from, we probably had a mile or so to go, so we didn't think it would take too long. However, I forgot how much snow slows you down, and by the time we neared the area we expected to see the elk, it had taken twice as long as expected and was a much harder hike. When we cut some fresh elk tracks near where we saw them last, we knew they should be close. Following the tracks up and over the ridge, we were disappointed that there were no elk. The tracks, however, joined up with other tracks and continued on up and over the next ridge in front of us. We followed, but over a mile later, we still hadn't caught up to them. At this point, we figured we'd see them any time, and so we just continued on after them.
All right, 4 hours later now, and all we've been doing is climbing the whole time. We finally spotted them. Well, spotted one elk bedded another half mile up the hill, probably at least. So I don't know if it was other hunters, if it was yesterday when all these elk got pushed. The bulls that we saw this morning, we've never seen them or anything, so I think there was just some other hunters that came around on another angle, but either way they're clear up in the trees, so we're just going to see if we can get an angle. But this has been tough. This is a lot of elevation game, a lot of miles, and in the snow. But as long as we're here, we'll see if we can get an angle and see what we got.
Slipping through the trees to a few vantage points, we did spot more elk. A bull caught my attention right off the bat, but something didn't look right. At closer inspection, it was a 5-point raghorn, but its left side only had 2 eye guards, and then it dropped down into a big club. A very unique bull for sure, but when I asked Aubrey if she wanted to take it, she still wanted to look for a bigger one. Not sure if more bulls were hidden in the trees, we stayed put and glassed for a bit. All we could see were about a dozen cow elk. So from there we decided to slip around them, as we wanted to look into the trees and make sure there weren't more elk hidden in there. But as we dropped below them and then swung back into where they were, we only saw the same elk. When they finally spooked, just the one screwy bull we had already knew about got up and moseyed on out to see where all the cows went.
So we followed this herd of elk until we found them, ended up only being a screwy raghorn in the group. So now we have to hightail it back to camp so I don't freeze. So it's 2 days later. We've spotted a herd of elk about on the mountain, and it's pretty stormy and it's freezing. So we're gonna bundle up and go get some vantage points to see if there's a big one in the herd.
As you can see, the snow had melted off some of the lower elevations, but the story today was the wind. It was blowing like mad, especially when we were on the exposed ridge line. I wouldn't doubt that it was gusting up to 50 miles an hour. Needless to say, it made the hiking miserable. When we finally made it to a vantage point, we had to hunker down behind some big rocks to try to get some shelter, but as you can see, we were seeing elk. We were actually surprised to see 3 groups of elk lower and closer to us than expected. We hung tight and glassed everything up as well as we could, making sure we didn't miss any big bull bedded up in the sagebrush somewhere. We had spotted a few small raghorns like this one feeding, but it was the elk antlers behind this rock outcropping that really caught my eye. There was obviously a bull bedded down right behind the rocks. The antlers belonged to the biggest elk in the herd, but as near as we could tell, it was still just a young 5-point bull. When it got up and fed off a little, it gave us a much better look. Giving Aubrey the chance to go after this one, she once again declined, as she was after a mature bull with this tag.
Well, we got to our vantage point, and we can see a different herd, but just spikes and raghorns, so oh well.
There were still more elk further up the mountain to try to get a better look at, and surely there would be a decent bull among these elk. But with all these elk nearby and not wanting to spook them, we had to drop back off and take another ridge up the mountain. By now it was after lunch, and so we were committing ourselves for the remainder of the day to this canyon. Hopefully it'd pan out. If I thought the wind was bad before, it only got worse. What I think was the worst part of it was we were hot and sweaty from the hard hike up, yet cold at the same time, as the wind cut right through to the bone on the extremities. After another couple 1,000-foot elevation gain, we were back in the elk. As I looked back behind us and up the mountain a little, a small group of elk were bedded up watching us not more than 100 yards off. Seeing antlers in the mix, I had Aubrey hurry and get ready for a possible shot. As she settled in on the bipods, I couldn't believe the elk hadn't spooked yet, as a few of the cows were watching us intently. As the bull moved a little, once again we realized it was just a smaller raghorn. Too bad, because it was nice and close for an easy shot.
Too small.
Usually we'd sit and watch a little bit, but as cold as it was on this exposed hillside, we just packed our stuff and kept moving. Getting to the vantage point we'd originally planned on so we could glass the other elk we'd seen from a ways off, we were amazed at how many elk we saw come out of the woodwork. There were dozens bedded up on the opposing hillside that we knew of, but it was all the elk that started feeding out of the trees that surprised us. They just kept coming until we had well over 100 elk below us and across the hillside. The problem? We just couldn't find any decent bulls. More raghorns, of course, but no mature bulls. We did see this crazy bull. It's just a 2-point, but its right side antler comes out of its head just over the eye and goes down along its head past its mouth.
Well, we've been sitting here watching the elk for a couple, probably an hour, and all there is raghorns and spikes and cows. Nothing big enough for me yet, so we're gonna head out.
Well, we'd learned at least one thing. Most likely, the bulls were not with the cows. At least the mature bulls. They must be in bachelor groups away from the big groups of cow elk. So after a new snowstorm, we headed out with plans of looking up higher on the mountains, ignoring any groups of cow elk we saw. Our new plan worked out well. After seeing a herd of cow elk, we bypassed them and kept glassing other areas. Following some tracks in the snow with the use of my spotting scope, I lucked into seeing some elk bedded up in the shadows of the pines several miles away. Picking them apart as best we could, I counted at least 5 bulls. If you look closely, you can see them scattered in the trees. Some of them looked like potential shooters, while others were obviously smaller. But what we really needed was to get closer. Knowing there might even be more, we just decided to go for it and make a hike up to them, hoping to find a mature bull in the group. After a long and hard hike, we got about 1,000 yards from them. From here, we watched as 7 bulls fed out from their bedding areas and onto the steep slope across from us. Right off the bat, we could tell these bulls were bigger than what we'd been seeing, but we still couldn't tell if any of them were mature bulls. This bull is just a 5-point, but it has a nice frame to it. All its points are long and in reality a pretty decent bull. Here's another 5-point, but not quite as big as the last one. The bull on top of the screen is a 6-point, but its 5ths and 6ths barely split, while the one below actually has better 5ths and 6ths. But the thing that caught my eye and took a little while to find was it had a 7th point on each side, about 2 inches long, right behind the 4th point. A 7-point, not a big one mind you, but still, that would be pretty cool if you ask me. Slipping on over to another little ridge to glass them from, we got to about 600 yards, and from there we could see them a little bit better. Now it was time for Aubrey to make a decision. With daylight running out soon, I kind of tried to talk Aubrey into taking the young 7-point. Having harvested a 6-point bull a few years ago, she asked me if this one was bigger than her first. To that, I had to admit I didn't think it was. It was a 7-point, but probably not any bigger than her first 6-point.
So up ahead of us we have a couple of 6s, a few 5-points, and a little 7-point. I'm going to pass them and see if I can't find anything bigger tomorrow, so hope I don't regret this.
The next day we saw plenty of deer, but not any elk. We even went back to where we'd seen the original 7 bulls, hoping to get one of those, and couldn't even find them. We ended the day watching a couple bucks rutting with several does. So now we're nearing the end of the hunt. Early in the morning we spotted 3 bulls bedded down several miles off. You can see 2 of them while the third one is bedded down in the sagebrush. This one appeared to have a decent rack. By that, it looked to be at least a 5-point or better. From this distance, I really couldn't tell any more than that. I asked Aubrey what she wanted to do, as they looked to be in a good spot to sneak in for a shot on. Even though we didn't know how big it was, Aubrey said that she was ready to take it. Whatever it was, if we could get in close for a shot, she'd tag it.
Alright, well, we headed back out and we spotted some more, so we're gonna go see if we can't get on them.
With that, we didn't even try to get in for a closer look as far as glassing goes. We just drove to the best point to start hiking from, which also kept us out of sight from the elk, and started up after them. I really felt like this was a perfect setup, as we had a great spot above them we could hike to that would put us in for a 100-yard shot or so. It started out easy enough, and we probably had about a bit over a mile to hike, but we soon realized we had a problem. As you've probably realized, it's hard to sneak up on any critter with crunchy snow like we had. The south-facing slopes had definitely melted and refroze, creating a very loud layer of snow. With that in mind, we worked over to the north-facing slope, hoping the snow would still be soft. To that we were disappointed, as it was nearly just as bad.
100 yards to go till we can see them if we don't end up spooking them.
Run up there and lay down, hurry.
When we were about 30 yards from where we figured we'd see them, I suddenly saw the 3 bulls running away from us on the opposite hillside about 300 yards off. Obviously, they'd heard us well before we got there.
The one right in the middle. You see the one in the middle? It's...
Having had Aubrey practice 400-yard shots before the season, I was confident in her shooting, and so we hurried and got her set up. By the time she was ready, the elk were actually at 390 yards.
Go again, hurry.
Taking her first shot, she missed. With that, she settled down a little bit until she felt more steady for the next one. I, on the other hand, with the sun reflecting off my viewfinder, was having a hard time getting the elk on camera. Of course, it didn't help that I was trying to range the elk at the same time.
Second bubble, the one in the middle still. Oh, you got him. You got him.
Thank you, Lord.
Oh, you did it, Aubrey. 400 yards. What do you got to say?
I love it.
I love it. That's the best thing you can hear from your daughter on a hunt, especially after a long, hard hunt like we have done.
Now it was time to go check out her bull.
We think he's a decent bull, but I'm okay with whatever. I'm just glad I got one.
When we first spotted them running off, I just quickly glassed to see which was the bigger, but didn't give it more than a half-second look before worrying about getting a range on them and filming them. So neither of us really knew what kind of bull she put down.
Holy smokes, he's a 7-point.
Thank you.
Wow. Broke off both fourths. That is a heck of a bull, though. Holy crap, he was a fighter. Wow. What do you think of that? A 7. A true 7-point.
You know, we came up not knowing what there was. We just knew there was at least a decent bull here. And even when she shot, it was such a hurried shot that we didn't know what it was other than, yeah, that's a good bull, let's hurry and take it. And so you get up here and it's got incredible mass. It actually curls back really cool on both sides, and it's actually a true 7-point. You wouldn't know it because he's broke off his main points here on both sides. So it's kind of unique. He's got his 4th, which is actually more like a 3rd sized, and then his 5th was actually going to be the long sword there on both sides. And he was a fighter because he's broke both those off. But you know, eye guards are really nice, super heavy, very big body, a lot of meat to pack out. So just a very mature bull. So it's cool. It's a very cool looking bull. So anyways, congratulations, Aubrey.
Thank you.
You passed on several and came out with a true trophy. So anyways, just a fantastic end to this hunt. Make sure